Welcome to the Bikini Things podcast, where we talk everything from fitness and competing to mental health and living a healthy lifestyle. I'm your host, IFBB Bikini Pro, Laura Moore-Shay, here with my co-host, IFBB Bikini Pro, Sammy Joe, and we're so happy you're here with us. Let's get started. How are you, Sammy?
Hello. I'm doing great. How are you?
Good. I'm good.
We are chugging through the week.
Yeah, chugging through the week. You know, had a little moment this morning. We're good though.
As long as we're through it, that's all that matters.
Yeah. It was one of those moments where I'm like, ooh, things to do today does not match up with the amount of hours.
It's in the day. Yeah. I feel that. We literally leave tomorrow for our trip.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like my calendar is like down to like every 30-minute block. So I'm like, okay, like, let's do this. We got it.
Yeah. For sure. That's so exciting. How long are you guys going for again?
We get home on Tuesday, but the cruise is from Friday to Monday.
Okay, fun.
So there's like 25 of us, I think, which is...
Whoa.
Yeah. So it's my parents' 40th wedding anniversary. And then my cousin was born on their honeymoon. So it's her 40th birthday as well.
Wow.
So it's two families basically coming together. And then Chris's dad and stepmom are coming with us as well.
Fun. That's really cool. That's really cool.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. A lot of different personalities. So, the boats are so big. But
well, I'm sure like something like a cruise, I feel like that's great because you guys can do stuff together when you want, but then everyone can also kind of like disperse and go do their thing. So that's really cool.
There's enough little things.
My family doesn't even have 25 people in it. So like conceptualizing that.
You're like, holy shit.
I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
Like in my head, like I literally go to like the beginning of the first Home Alone movie in my head. I'm like, oh, it must be like that.
Literally. My mom's one of 6 and my dad's one of 7. So like we just naturally have big families.
Yeah.
Like we don't get together like we used to. So this is like the first, I don't even think I've been on a family trip like this with this many people. We usually just do like Christmas parties, but like we haven't even done that since I was like 12.
Dang.
Crazy. So
cool. Well, super exciting. That'll be fun.
You guys know how it goes on the next podcast.
Yeah, for sure.
All the family drama.
Yeah, follow along with Sammy's Instagram, even though you're going to watch this after her trip's over.
Yeah.
So last weekend, we were both at the very first show of the year. It's already, we're only a few weeks into the year, but we already have shows coming back. We had the LA Fit Expo Muscle Contest Challenge, West Coast Naturals the day after. So Sammy and I were at the LA Fit Expo Challenge on Saturday with the very first ever fit model division. So Sammy, what was your experience like being at the show, and what did you think of all of it?
Yeah, I thought it was super cool. That was actually the first time like talking to the expo itself really quick. It was the first time I had actually been to the LA Fit Expo since COVID. So since January 2020, that was the last time I went to the LA Fit Expo. So it was interesting in general. There were like really like random one-off booths, honestly. And there was like Ralph's, which is a grocery store for people who aren't from California, giving out like blue corn chips. And I was like, what are you doing here? Like, this is...
Yeah. They've come to past Fit Expos, like, yeah, just handing out snacks.
Yeah. So it was really interesting, like not too many like super big name brands there, but definitely cool to see like some smaller brands like getting out there. It was a lot busier than I thought, but to the actual show itself, it was super cool to be there and see like firsthand like the fit model division happening for the very first time ever. I feel like everybody's been talking so much about it. There's been so much speculation and guessing and things like that. So it was really cool to actually see it come to fruition for the first time, and kind of being there to make history. It was super cool.
Yeah.
What was your perspective? Because I know you were backstage, but then also watching the show too.
Yeah, the show overall, I've had clients in this specific show the last 2 years, I guess 3 years. So the show overall was bigger than it was last year. So that's always good. That's exciting. I think the economy seems like it's on a little bit of an upswing a little. So I think that's going to hopefully help bodybuilding in the industry this year. So that was good. As far as the fit model division, I guess I have a couple maybe contrasting thoughts. So one is it's, very exciting. It's a brand new division. I think it's going to create a lot of opportunities like we've talked about for women who want to compete, or maybe, they have less muscle. Maybe they don't want to use steroids, things like that. It's going to create a lot of opportunities. Or you're freaking 6 feet tall and you're never going to be big enough to be any other division. It's going to create those opportunities. At the same time, this is the first show of the year. I would say, as a reminder to anyone who looked at photos or was there, remember the first show of the year is also typically the least competitive show of the year, meaning you don't have the most athletes. You don't typically have athletes that are chasing pro cards most of the time in that show, just because typically you're going to have those athletes on stage closer to the summer when more of the national shows are happening. So I would say the level of competitor in general at these early shows is not as high. So I think some people felt kind of underwhelmed by the fit model division, and I can understand where that's coming from, because at the end of the day, it's a smaller, softer bikini competitor. And at the amateur level, remember that you may, in just a regular bikini, NPC bikini competition, you may not have a lot of great physiques, because again, this is an amateur level competition. So then you take that and you dilute it down a little more of okay, we're going to take that bikini girl and we're going to make her less muscular. We're going to make her softer. And so I know a lot of people had the comments of oh, these girls don't even look like they dieted. They don't even really look like they work out. I think that's not fair. I think a lot of them looked really good. It's different from what we're used to seeing on a bodybuilding stage. But this is literally some of those girls that were up there are more muscular than women who were in the Olympia in the early days of bikini. So let's try to have some perspective here and recognize that all of the divisions, men's and women's divisions, the athletes are only getting more muscular and more dense as time goes on. So bikini is only going to keep getting more muscular, you guys. It's not going to stay where it's at. It's going to keep going until the judges say, okay, this is the maximum amount of muscle you can possibly have.
Yeah.
At that point, whether that's next year or 3 years from now or whatever, bikini may not even be recognizable anymore. Yeah. And fit model is basically going to turn into bikini. Let's be real. And I was joking with a lot of people at the show. I'm yeah, this, because a lot of people were oh, it's not, I'm not that impressed or whatever. It's no, you got to look at this and remember that this is going to be just as muscular as when I won my pro card a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
In 2 years, this will probably be just as muscular as bikini, 2018, 2019, etc.
Yeah. And to understanding this is the first time it's ever hit this stage. So it's yes, while there is a set of criteria and guidelines to meet, there is still such a huge gray area of what is expected on stage, because they haven't even seen it in person in 6 or 7 years to even know, is this what we actually want? What, yeah, we can say this is what we want, but what does that actually look like when put on a person on a stage, compared to other people next to them? So the ability for evolution is there's literally no limit to it, because we don't even know what we're looking for. They don't even know what they're looking for.
Yeah. Well, I think, we'll see. I mean, it's gonna evolve, just like what happened with wellness in 2020, 2021, and so on. And they've kind of been refining that look. And I think they've figured that out pretty well. And the judges have done a great job communicating what they want.
Yeah.
Same thing will happen with Fit Model. Wellness wellness, when it first came out, there were a lot of top athletes from Brazil and different parts of the world, but a lot of it really came from Brazil. And then, at one point, the girls started getting really big, just really big everywhere. And they almost kind of looked for a minute, people were kind of talking about how wellness just looked like women's physique with bigger asses. And around that time, this was probably a couple of years ago, the judges were very clear that, okay, wellness needs to look like Franciali. It needs to look like Isa Pereira Nunes. And these are the girls we want. You need to look like a bikini competitor basically up top and a wellness competitor on the bottom, and don't get bigger than that. So something like that will happen with Fit Model. Should we share some of the photos, Sammy? Do you have access to the NPC News Online? I think for those on YouTube, it'd probably be pretty cool to see the stage shots, because those are out already.
So let's start with the overall winner. So this is Angela Miranda. Let's grab.
Yeah, maybe a front pose. And one thing too, I guess I'll mention while we're getting all this pulled up, I really liked that there was a big color variety in the suits for Fit Model. I thought that was cool. We saw a lot of different colors, and we saw different like fabrics and things like that. I know the NPC just yesterday released info on the cuts of the suits, but I loved the different colors. And I also felt like we had some really pretty, girls in the show. Like I feel like this girl who won, Angie, she's very pretty.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that is part of what this division is meant to be too. It's also, that'd be a question I'd be curious to ask someone like Sandy or Tyler. I know they had the women's workshop last weekend, so I don't know if this got brought up, but it's like, is facial beauty getting judged in this category? Is it more than just our physique?
Yeah.
I could very easily see that.
I wonder too, since this is more of, and this could just be me like overthinking it or overanalyzing it. I'm wondering if the level of stage makeup should be that as wellness and bikini and things like that. Like, is this more of a natural look? Like, don't get me wrong. We need some type of level of stage makeup. I mean, it could just be like,
yeah, no, these girls. So Angie, and then my personal favorite, maybe we can also show Emily, my personal favorite. I'm a little biased because I know who she is. She's Stanimal, the pro bodybuilder. That's his girlfriend.
Okay.
He trains with Chris Psycho. And Emily has competed at muscle contests before, so I've seen her at shows. But both of those girls, like Emily, Angie, all the girls that competed in Fit Model, their hair and makeup was still the full deep. Because the thing is, think about it this way: you still to be really clear, you still need the full makeup. Maybe hair doesn't need to be so like styled or dramatic, tight curls or things like that. Maybe it's more natural, kind of with the hair. But with the makeup, you still have those bright stage lights, and you've got to remember you need the makeup so that you don't lose your facial features. Otherwise, the stage lights will wash you out. So Emily, she had her makeup done by Nancy, which looked really good, and she's a natural bikini competitor. I was actually chatting with her coach. She's coached by Adam from See You Later Leaner. And I just felt like she just had everything. Like, don't get me wrong, Angie looked great too, but I felt like Emily, one of the things that stood out to me is I just felt like her midsection was a lot smaller and more toned. And I felt like her overall shape was more hourglass, and just across the board. Like, she's just like, you look at her, she's just beautiful. And I just felt like her look was just very clean, very just overall really nice look. And I think a lot of people felt the same. So I think it was honestly probably pretty close between her and Angie, the overall winner.
Yeah, for sure.
One interesting thing we were chatting about too was how much push to your glutes do you give in the back pose? Because some of the girls
noticed that.
Did you notice some were pushing harder than others?
Yes.
Yeah. And some also had more like visible tie-ins than others too. Granted, most of these women, I'm guessing all of them were likely bikini competitors.
One point, yeah.
Prior to this weekend.
Yeah, I won't do glute shots just for YouTube's sake, but unless you think that'll be okay.
If it's an NPC News Online photo?
Yeah, I guess we're not monetized yet. Because
plus it's going to show up with our faces. It's only going to be part of the screen.
So this was Emily's back pose, which I think, like, again, in that sense of like, you can see the tie-in here, but it's not as prominent as it would be in bikini, right? Which I think is exactly how I interpreted what they're looking for. Yeah. So I feel like just the balance and shape, like she doesn't have huge cap shoulders here. Like I think her conditioning is on point for how they explained it. And then same with, hands.
I agree. And you notice too, so why don't we go back to Angie? Because Emily, she even told me after prejudging, like I sort of asked her, I'm like, hey, how did it go? Because the backstage area is so small, like everyone's right there. And she was saying she didn't push. She felt like the other girls were pushing more. So she wasn't sure if that made a difference. And who knows, it may have, because I think a lot of people had it pretty close between Angie and Emily. And I think Angie had slightly more developed glutes. So maybe that was the difference. I kind of put her over the top. I think Emily's core looked better. But yeah, Angie, and I would argue too, so this is another kind of like they have to figure out what they're looking for. To me, she looks like she has tie-ins. Like they're not etched in, but those are tie-ins. Because usually too, the stage shots, at least muscle contest stage shots, I think they tend to make us look a little softer than we actually look in person. So if this is a softer version of her, she for sure had tie-ins on show day. Yeah. She looks great. I mean, she's got the shape. She's got very full glutes. I mean, she looks like a bikini competitor for sure from the back.
Yeah, for sure. And I think too, like another thing, and I pulled this up that we can talk about is the post that NPC News Online made on Instagram.
Yes. Can you pull that? Can you screen
Yeah,
share that?
I have it up. So let's go over this. So this is NPC News Online, straight from the source.
Uh-huh.
And this was a huge, and I can attest to this from what Margaret had been telling us, working with Debbie and JM about getting just clear-cut clarification on what bottoms are supposed to look like. So from the second that fit model was announced, Margaret was literally on the phone with Debbie, making like trial samples of our bottoms, sending her photos of them on athletes, saying, what do you think of this? How is this? Blah, 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 whatever. So they made this post basically just, and I'm just going to like summarize this, reiterating that the bottoms do need a 50% coverage in the back. And then if you're a suit maker and you're not following these, you will basically not be allowed to make fit model suits for the industry.
Yeah.
And they will have like a preferred suit company for everybody to go to. And that these are going to be super strict rules. And I do understand, like, obviously there's going to be some road bumps or, that we go through for like the first show. There's always going to be some trial and error, especially with kind of how, I don't know. I don't want to say it was unclear what the criteria was because it seemed pretty clear. Like,
yeah.
I feel like that's where I don't know if I'm being biased, but it's like what they wanted.
With the suits, I think it's tricky, right? Because, I mean, obviously you and I both work with Toxic Angels. So I will always say I'm biased, but even if I didn't work with them, they're still the best suits. So I know Margaret is like so detailed with that. And she was working with the IFBB immediately to figure out the cuts. I think every suit maker just didn't go through that effort and they just kind of figured, oh, I can just basically make a bikini suit with no stones. And I don't think it's anything intentional. I think if anything, it's probably just like probably a little bit of laziness and also a little bit of, competitors are always going to want, like nowadays, more girls are going to want smaller bottoms to make their glutes look bigger, and that's the reality is less fabric doesn't always make your glutes look bigger. It can make your glutes look smaller. Some of the girls, for example, like some of the Olympians that we suit and we fit, some of them with the biggest glutes actually wear pro cut.
Yeah.
Versus some that wear X micro. So I think some of it's probably on the athlete for wanting a smaller cut to try to make their glutes look bigger. And some of it is probably just like a lack of initiative or a lack of attention to detail. Do you want to just scroll through, Sammy, so we can point out like which bottoms are correct and which ones aren't correct for anyone?
So this is going to be the front coverage. So this is going to be how high it comes up on your pelvis and the width of the suit as well.
Yeah.
So I feel like this is one thing that a lot of girls, and to be fair, it's also about how the competitor is wearing their suit, right?
Yeah.
They have it super low in the front and super high up on their glutes. So like they basically have it just long out, like wedgie up, whatever. So it's sitting too high. So the coverage isn't even what it actually is. So
back in the day, we'll see if they do this back in the day, especially at national shows, but I think even at regional shows, they can do this too. They can ask to check your suit. So we might see some of that where like you literally have to wear your suit to check-ins and the judges will check you at the check-in meeting to make sure your suit is appropriate. Yeah. We might see some of that. That used to happen at national shows for bikini and it's kind of stopped, but I'm guessing that might come back with Fit Model.
Yeah. This is just like a sample, but again, larger fit. And it's funny because I think like for this one, there is like this bunching of fabric here, which no one wants. But you have to understand too, like that is also going to be dependent on the suit company. How many variations of their suit do they have? Right? Do they account for taller competitors? Do they account for shorter competitors? Do they have different types of coverages for different body types? Because not everyone's body is made the same. Some people have a smaller pelvis pelvic floor,
Yeah.
and some people have a wider pelvic floor. So like those are
Yeah.
all things like even as a suit maker that you have to take into account when
Yeah.
dealing with these. So this is
Yeah.
going to be the bottom coverage here. This is going to be, the wider 50% coverage. There is a little bit of butt scrunch here, but again, it's that fuller coverage look. So this is a correct suit bottom. And then, sorry, wrong button.
You're good.
This is also going to be a correct bottom. So more coverage here in the glutes. And then that scrunch butt here. This is going to be an incorrect suit bottom cut. So I can tell you that this one, for the first and foremost, this looks almost like a stretched out wellness V cut, in my opinion.
I see what you're saying. Like the
Or
shape of it does.
yeah, it looks
Yeah.
very like a wide V. So almost like a wellness V. Like definitely not, I'm not saying one for one because wellness V typically is usually very narrow and like very pointed down at the bottom. So there
Yeah.
is some type of like scoop or something here.
Yeah. Or it's almost maybe it's like rounded and it's just sitting really low.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So not just the shape, like it probably would have been a better cut if it came across her pelvis all the way up here. In my opinion. And then these bottoms here, again, I would say if it came about down to here, that would be about 50% coverage and then maybe a little bit less scrunch in the bottoms. You have to think like for our bottoms now, we scrunch them to make them smaller, to give it more shape, but that's not necessarily what we're looking
Yeah.
for here.
Yeah. That one to me just looks like a normal pro cut bikini bottom.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. Which it probably, I mean, to be fair, it probably is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Same thing kind of with this one. This one is like closer. It's more coverage, but it's like not as much maybe as they're looking for.
Yeah. And then I keep hitting the wrong. And then this one is just completely the wrong. I would say this is considered a thong, which is absolutely what they did not want. So not enough coverage whatsoever on that one.
Got it. Got it.
But yeah, so that was actually great of them. I mean, I feel like that post raised a little controversy, but what in the industry doesn't,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they're trying to set the standards correctly. I think Dan Solomon was there, who's the promoter of the Olympia, but I don't think anyone from like officially the IFBB or anything other than the judging panel was there. It's like the Manions and, whoever's working on determining the criteria, like they still need to give their input, even if they're not at these shows or running, judging these shows too. So it'll get figured out as time goes on. And we've got more shows coming up in February. Like we've got, I think the next one, I don't know across the country, but I know Legends is coming up in Vegas the weekend of Valentine's Day. So we'll have more of these opportunities to kind of check out the division, see how it's going. I also know there's a couple Las Vegas posing seminars for Fit Model. We saw one from Team Elite Physique, and then I think also the Posing Portal's having one in February. So those will be really cool. You guys can, go hit up their pages and, if you're in Vegas, go sign up. Maybe Sammy and I will do one at some point here in SoCal soon. That could be cool.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's an interesting division. So I think it's going to be an interesting year. I really feel like Fit Model is going to be one of the maybe controversial, maybe not, but I think it's going to be a big talking point this year because I think there's some people that are excited and, excited to see where it goes. And I think there's a lot of people that just think it's a complete joke and don't want to see it at all.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm really interested because I think Junior Nats is the first national show to announce that they have the Fit Model division with pro qualifier.
Okay.
So that's going to be really interesting because I think already, and you have to understand like the regions of the United States in general, how different the physiques are, right? Like a physique that you see coming from the East Coast is not the same physique you see coming from the Midwest, is not the same physique you see coming from the West Coast. And I'm talking in terms of bikini, right? Like what we actually know of and have like record of seeing like patterns. So it's going to be really interesting to see the different physiques that come to Junior Nats or the pro qualifier from across the US, just because like you can already tell the difference in physiques from bikini. So I just think with the amount of like unknown that there is to this division, I think it's going to be it's going to be juicy. The tea is going to be hot all year, guys.
I think so too, Sammy. I think so too.
I'm so excited
Yeah.
I'm excited for the progression, right? Because like,
Yeah.
I haven't been, in all words, in all honesty, I haven't been in bodybuilding enough to see the progression of a new sport, right? Like I wasn't in it yet when wellness was introduced. Like I was kind of around it, but like not as much to really deep dive the evolution of bikini itself. So like this is the first new thing in bodybuilding for me.
Yeah.
Actually see from start to finish. So, or start to beyond really. But yeah, I'm just excited.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. And I think one thing I've touched on, and I'll share more and stuff too, is like for me, this might be my last like season as a bikini pro. If I'm still doing this and they're still telling me like, Laura, you know, you got a great look, you great shape, all that, we just want to see more muscle mass come in fuller. I don't think I can keep doing it. You know, I just don't. If I was younger, I think things would be different. I'm older than I want to admit. And I think if I want to give myself the chance to have a family and things like that, I cannot continue to compete forever. I think it would be not a very intentional choice to just let myself compete and ignore my personal life. So yeah, I may switch to fit model in 2026 when there are pro shows, because I've been told for like 7-8 years I'm too small for this division. And I started out as a natural athlete. I do not claim to be one now, but I'm pretty mild in my approach. And it's like, if I can't get this done, if I can't be a bikini athlete and do well and still, for the most part, look and sound like a female, then it's probably just something I don't have the genetics or the right look for. So, and that's heartbreaking, but I think I've already kind of like come to terms with that.
Too, I feel like having the ability to switch, like I think it like the silver lining of it, right? Like, don't get me wrong, I agree that is super upsetting to like be in it for so long and have this like drive and passion for something to just be told like it's not possible. But I think having this other avenue as a silver lining is definitely super cool, because then like you can basically be the front runner for it, right? Like
Yeah.
in the pro division, right? You have
Yeah.
all of the experience, all of the knowledge, all of it. And then now you can just take it to the moon.
Who knows though, Sammy? Like I could do it and they could be like, Laura, you're too big. Sorry, we want smaller girls. You know, like there's no guarantee that I would do well in it. So this is one of those things. And, you know, it's not that it's not possible in bikini. I think I've been around it long enough. I've learned, I've observed, and I don't want to come out of this time of my life being extremely virilized. And I think there's a lot of women, like, no shade, like, and I'm not talking about anyone specific. Like, please, I don't want anyone to think that I'm not talking about anyone specific. I'm just talking in general. Like all of us as women, you can only put so many androgens in your body before it has a real effect, before you're literally initiating a gender transition. And I do not want a gender transition. Like
Yeah.
I don't want to permanently look different. I don't want to permanently sound different. So it's like, you know, I know where my line is, I guess. And maybe I didn't do enough drugs in the past to get where I wanted to be. But, you know, I was also listening to the coaches I had and the coaches I worked with, like Kim and Jamie. They were both very like moderate in their approach with everything. And a lot of times it was like me bringing things up or asking questions and stuff, and then them directing you. So it's just, I don't know. It's one of those things. I guess I'm just getting older, Sammy, and you kind of figure out what you want for yourself. So
yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
And that's going to change, right? Like you're like, again, a couple years ago, you know, had your heart set on competing and that was it. And then it's like, there comes a point where your priorities change, your outlook on life changes. So for anyone listening, like keep that open mind, right? Like, the path that you're on right now doesn't mean that there isn't an exit that you can take to go on a different path. There's maybe a detour that puts you somewhere else. Like, I'm a huge believer in everything happens for a reason. So there's always some type of evolution. There's always some type of road bump. There's always some type of detour that takes you in a different path for a reason. And I'm a big believer in that. So it's just exciting to see where life takes, you know, you or anybody in general.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. It's absolutely. And I think, you know, part of where I'm coming from and part of why I'm sharing it too is like, I've seen this happen to other women in the sport too, where I think they they unintentionally don't give themselves a chance to have a family because they're competing. And then that window closes because of our age and the reality of our biology. And I think some of them feel sad about it, probably. And I think I would. I think I would. So I'm genuinely trying to, put myself out there, try to have a personal life as best I can. And I don't want to let that at least unintentionally happen to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Because hey, competing is in lesser terms, it's a high like no other that you literally continue to chase, because even for myself, like I wasn't placing well at my shows, but I sure as shit wanted to keep going. Like, it's just such a good feeling. Like you're at your peak, like you look maybe slightly like a skeleton in your face, but like your physique is great. Like you get addicted to that feeling of being on stage. And sometimes you really just have to take a step back and be like, what do I want? Like, what do I truly want? And, not everybody has the ability to do that, like you said, until it's too late. And then your window of opportunities shrink.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, like I love competing and I want to keep doing it as much as I can. But you're right, Sammy. It is also, it's like there's also a lot of dopamine you get from competing. Like being on stage is like a huge adrenaline dopamine rush to your brain. Same thing with Instagram and stuff, and like posting your physique photos, posting videos from your shows and getting all those likes and things. It's also dopamine. So you're spot on, Sammy. It's like, yes, we love this. And it's something that I think all of us go into because we're extremely passionate about fitness and building our bodies. But at the same time too, I think it is important to have that awareness of like, okay, where is my desire and what is my intent for this? And where's it coming from? And some of it you might sit back and realize like, oh, maybe I really like the validation. Maybe I'm a little hooked. Maybe I'm a little hooked on the likes. Maybe I'm a little hooked on, everyone wishing me happy peak week and stuff like that. Because as pros, especially, we can compete a lot. Like you can just go and go and go as long as you can, afford it and keep your job good and stuff like that. Some of it too, Tarek actually talked to me about this. He's like, some people really, he's like, Laura, so this was like at a show one time or something on break. And he's like, some people just really get addicted to the dopamine. They get addicted to it and they can't let go. He's like any good competitor knows when it's time to hang it up.
Yeah. And I think too, it's like, look at it in big picture. And like, I don't think a lot of people look this far into life, but it's like when you're 60, yes, masters, exist. Yeah. But like what master pro is 60 years old competing? Like maybe there is one, but there's far and few between. It's like, what do you want your life to look like at 60 years old? Are you going to be on stage? Are you going to be able to keep up with that at 60 years old? Or do you want a life, a family experience? Like what? And not everybody wants a family. Not everyone wants grandchildren. Yeah. That's not for everybody. And I completely understand that. But like, think about what your life is going to look like in 20, 40 years. What does that look like? Does that still follow the morals and values that you have or have had in the past? And that was like, for me, I knew before I even started competing, I was like, I want to be a mom. And then I started competing and I was like, holy shit, I'm kind of good at this. And I kind of really like it. So like, let's go. And then I'm like, well, hold on. I was supposed to turn pro and stop and start a family. But I got addicted. I was like, I want to keep going. They told me to jump into a pro show. I jumped into a pro show and I was like, all right, now I'm done. And then they were like, hey, put some more muscle on. And I was like, well, how good am I going to do if I put muscle on? I'm like, well, I don't want to not find out. So I go and do what they tell me to do. And I jump into more shows. And now here I am 2, almost 3 years later, now questioning, like, do I keep competing or do I stop and, start looking into what it takes to start a family? So it's like, you have to remember what that core value of yours is. And it's like, no, Sammy, literally since you could understand the concept of being a mom, you wanted to be a mom. So you've put it off long enough. Now it's like, when do you start making that transition?
Yeah. And I really appreciate that you shared that, Sammy. I think a lot of women will probably relate to that too. And same thing. It's like, I'm not married like you are. but it's the amount of time that's passed just unintentionally where I've just been so focused on competing and like, oh, it doesn't matter if I don't have a relationship. Like, I'll do that later. I'll do that later. And it's like, no, a lot of times passed. Like, wake up. A lot of times passed. What do you really want? Because it can be easy to get caught up. It can be really easy to get caught up in things, especially when you're getting so many compliments and your ego's getting flattered constantly. So I think just, yeah, you're, like you said, being intentional, really sitting back and thinking about what you want. It's important. It's important because I think it's like almost let myself go to sleep for a little while. And so it's not that I'm done competing or anything, but it's like I'm just trying to be a lot more intentional with what I am doing and really thinking through my decisions and my choices.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think too, not to mention like, and I'm not naming anybody specific because there are probably 20 people at the top right now that fall into this category, but it's like, you have to see who the younger generation's idols are. Where are they in life? Maybe they have significant others and their significant others are in the industry as well. But they're this point where in both of their lives, both the man and the woman, the boyfriend, the girlfriend, the fiance, whoever it is, competing and fitness and bodybuilding in general is the center of both of their worlds. Mm-hmm. So it's like, you don't know what conversations they're having, behind closed doors, but it's like they see these people idolizing, competing at every big name show in the year, pushing for an Olympia qualification, getting the Olympia qualification, competing at Olympia, and then applying for the Arnold. And then now they're competing in the Arnold, and then maybe they take 3 months off, and then now they're competing again for their Olympia qualification. And it's like just this like rotation of like competing year round. And it's like, okay, a lot of the girls at the top are 25 to 30 years old, 25 to 35 even. And it's like, okay, they don't share, maybe not everybody shares that like personal goals of life, but it's like they see these women, they're like, oh, well, they're 35 and they're competing and they don't have kids. I can do the same thing. And it's like, well, yes, you can, but also like you don't know what's happening behind closed doors for them. So they're idolizing people that are sharing half of their life, and they're idolizing only half of their life, but not what's happening over here that no one knows.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's like another perspective to think about.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Because you're right. Social media, what we see in the public, it's a highlight reel. So you're really only going to see the good aspects of what people are going through. You're not going to see if you have a top Olympia competitor who's in her late 30s, wondering with her husband if they should, stop competing to have a family or things like that. Or even just, competitors have health issues and things like that. Like Laura Lee, whatever her reason was to not prep for the Arnold, it's like she clearly was going through something this spring where she felt like, okay, this isn't the best thing for me. I need to make a different decision. So even like our Miss Bikini Olympia, there's probably things going on behind the scenes we don't, you never know the full picture of someone's life, I guess.
Yeah, so 100%.
Yeah. So Fit Model, we got on a bit of a tangent, but I think this is also probably
great info. That was
probably valuable still. Like as women, it's just tricky. Like even, I don't know, even when I worked in engineering, it's like, I feel like we just have more to think through because in some ways we have more options of what we can do. We can work, we can compete, we can have a family, we can not work, for stay-at-home mom, things like that. So we have a lot of choices, but I think it adds complexity to our lives sometimes.
100%.
So
one last thing just popped into my head too, in that sense, because I'm part of that Facebook group I told you about, like the competitors Facebook group.
Yeah.
You have to think too, like bodybuilding is such a selfish sport. So like, while I might be addicted to being on stage, my husband might not. So, and like granted, that's not our situation. Like my husband's very supportive of me continuing to compete because that's a conversation we had, right? Like having a family was a mutual goal of ours, but also me competing was something he supported. So that was a decision we made on our together collectively, but not everybody has that, right? So if you are in a relationship or considering being in a relationship, whatever, and you are addicted to this dopamine rush that is competing, you have to put into perspective that whoever you're with, you're essentially, and I don't know how else to explain this, but you're pushing their timeline back as well. to fulfill your dopamine rush. So you could have a significant other that's like, wow, I really want kids. Again, for men, obviously they can do it a lot further along in life. Like they're capable. They're not the one carrying the child, but they do still run into complications as well. But it's like you're pushing their timeline back by being quote unquote selfish in this dopamine rush. So like, not only are you thinking about yourself and your health risks, but you're also thinking about someone else's goals and timeline. So it's like that communication with your partner is also super important because, like I said, bodybuilding can be a very selfish sport. Like, my husband's not getting the dopamine rush by me being on stage. Like, yeah, maybe he enjoys it. Like, he enjoys seeing me on stage, like, happy. But, like, the actual dopamine rush is mine, not his. Sure. So that's something to take into account, too, like, when thinking about all of it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that could even be its own episode topic, like navigating having kids and competing and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, we could do something with that there. Well, cool. Well, I feel like we covered the first fit model division really well. And there's going to be a ton more of these shows coming up. So I'm excited for everyone out there to have a chance to see the photos, go attend in person, watch. It's definitely, I think it's going to continue to stay a hot / controversial topic for a bit. So it's fun. We're here for it. Anything else we want to wrap up with, Sammy?
No, I mean, as always, if you guys have questions about Fit Model or anything like that, our DMs, comments section's always open. We're always collecting questions to talk about on the podcast. Keep an eye out if we ever post on our stories question boxes. We do plan on doing Q&A sessions as well. Yeah, just excited for the division and then just what the podcast has to offer for 2020.
Absolutely. So as always, thank you guys for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and share with a friend. If you're listening on an audio platform, don't forget to rate, review, share with a friend as well so the podcast can grow. We appreciate you guys so much, and we'll catch you in the next episode.